So now we're going to be making the pizza, and I'm going to make it with a very unusual ingredient. Don't know if you've heard of quinoa. Quinoa is what's considered a grain, but it's actually a seed, and it's actually a complete protein as well. So you don't need to worry about mixing your amino acids if you're a vegetarian or a vegan. It is so versatile. We need 1 cup of quinoa. Now with quinoa, a lot of people have said to me that it tastes bitter and a bit soapy. It does depend on what quinoa you're buying, but what I recommend you do is if you rinse it properly, it actually removes a lot of the taste that people don't like. So if you just pop it into a sieve and give it a good rinse. And then if you've got a blender, pop it in your blending jug. If not, you can use a food processor, but a blender is much easier. So the extra ingredients we need in there, we need 1/4 cup of water and 3 tablespoons. 1, 2, 3. We need 3/4 tablespoon of baking powder. 1, 2. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Please don't use iodized table salt. And nutritional yeast. It gives a real cheesy flavour to something if you can't eat cheese. So we put in 6 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. 5, 6. And all we're going to do now is blend it up so it goes really smooth and silky into a batter. So in with the quinoa and the other ingredients, you need to make sure you add in about 3 tablespoons of melted coconut oil. Now this is what I was saying about natural ingredients. They're all very different. Sometimes you need to add a bit more water. Now this isn't blending as smoothly as it should do, so we're going to put in a little bit more water. I'm just giving it another blend. We really do want it nice and smooth. If you're organised, what you can do is soak your cup of quinoa the night before, and it just really speeds up this process. So I think it could well be ready. That's the sort of consistency you want, like a batter, a thick batter. I would highly recommend you don't put it straight onto a baking tray. Investing in some good baking sheets is well worth it. These don't give off any of the nasty chemicals that your normal ones do. What we're going to do to ensure it doesn't stick is just put a light coating of oil on there, coconut oil. So then you just spread it out into your desired shape. You want it to be about 1/2 centimetre thick. So now this goes in the oven for 15 minutes to start with, and then we turn it over and we cook it for another 10 minutes. The oven needs to be at 200 degrees centigrade. 15 minutes is up, so we're going to take it out of the oven and turn it over and pop it back in again for about 10 minutes. Actually, that doesn't need to go back into the oven. When you turn it over, depending on what you're actually cooking it on, if it's nice and brown at the bottom, you don't need to put it back into the oven again. So what I'm going to do now is put the filling on top, tomato paste. So we're going to be putting on about 6 tablespoons of tomato paste on the top. A lot of people use tinned tomatoes and then simmer them right down, and yes, you can intensify the flavours, but tinned tomatoes, you really don't want to be using tins if you can possibly help it. They're more often not lined with plastic, and that gets absorbed into the food. So I found just by using tomato puree instead of tinned tomatoes, it just makes life so much easier, and it's more healthy for you. Now I can't eat cheese, but if you do eat cheese, you can put cheese on top, but I really don't think you need it. So then we're going to pop on some of the roasted vegetables. If you want to, you can put on some garlic, you can put on some chilies, capers, olives, anything that takes your fancy. So now we pop that back in the oven for about 10 minutes or so. Now we're going to be making the pasta carbonara, and to start with, I like to serve it with Parmesan cheese. but I can't eat cheese, so this is my version. Very different to what you would normally have, but it has that cheesy flavour because again we're using the nutritional yeast. I like to use this particular nutritional yeast because it's got B12 in. So we need 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast, 1/4 cup of cashew nuts, a teaspoon of salt, and we're also putting in 1 teaspoon of turmeric. Put a little twist of black pepper because black pepper helps activate the turmeric to get the curcumin out. We've got fats in there from the cashew nuts, so that's going to be perfect to get the most nutritional value. So now we just want to blitz this to breadcrumb size. Perfect. So now just tip them into a bowl and you can sprinkle this on top of the carbonara. So now we're going to make dairy-free creamy sauce, again with cashew nuts. I'm a great fan of cashew nuts. And you don't need to wash your container out again. So here we've got 3/4 cup of cashew nuts, which have been soaked overnight. If you've got a high-speed blender, you can get away with 20 minutes of boiling water. But if you've got a traditional normal blender or a food processor, I'd probably say overnight's the best way. So I've just drained these cashew nuts. And we need 3/4 cup of water. And 6 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. So gives it the nice cheesy flavour. Oh, I nearly forgot salt and pepper. You can add the seasoning at the end. I know I'm definitely going to be putting salt and pepper in, so I like to add it at this point. And then we whiz it until it's nice and smooth. So I think it's ready now. So that's the sort of consistency we're looking for, is thick double cream. Time's up now, so I'm just going to take the pizza out of the oven. And it's cooked beautifully. And just before you serve it, I would put on a few drizzles of extra virgin olive oil just to give an Italian flavour to it. Don't be tempted to cook with it though, but just sprinkle it on just as you're about to serve. Rainbow of colours, beautiful.